Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ronnie versus the World. I'm your host, Ron Pashery. Real quick, before I get into anything, I want to mention thank you to anyone who has listened to the first 3 episodes. Even if you've only listened to 1 out of the 3, I appreciate you even taking that time. I want to say thank you to Newark. I forgot to do that last week for whatever reason. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. My Karate Kid episode did really well in Newark, where Daniel LaRusso was originally from. I don't know if there's a small group of Karate Kid historians in Newark. They're just waiting for new Karate Kid content. But I appreciate you guys giving me a boost in my listener numbers. The Back to the Future one tailed off a little bit, but I think that is because Hill Valley, California doesn't actually exist. So there were no citizens of the town where Marty McFly was from that could listen to my show. But thank you to Newark. I mentioned at the end of the show that this week's episode would be about one of 2 topics. Next week's episode will be about the other topic that I don't get to this week. But this week is going to be about energy healing. I started my own personal journey with energy healing in March when I was kind of at the height of all my medical and kind of emotional and psychological issues, and that journey has kind of been a big part of leading me to being here doing this right now. I haven't really talked about it for one reason being it is pretty personal to me, and also I've always been worried about can I really talk about it effectively, and I was never really sure. So I decided to bring in my first ever guest on Ronnie versus the World, my own personal energy healer, and a very good friend of mine, Kara Laudenslager. Kara, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ronnie. I'm so happy to be here.
It is great to have you. I was going to thank you in my list of thank yous in my prologue episode, but I realized if I thanked you and said what you did, I'd probably get a lot of people who just didn't know what it was or may not resonate. And like I said, it's been important to me and has helped me so much. I thought I should dedicate an entire episode to it because it probably could help a lot of other people too who don't even realize that it's a thing.
Thank you so much. That's good. You don't want to scare people off too early.
No. And I'm always worried about scaring people off.
Yeah.
So you don't do just energy healing. You do other things too. We'll get to that later. But because this episode is about energy healing, you may not be able to explain exactly what energy healing is to someone who doesn't know. Mm-hmm. But I do think you should at least explain what exactly it is that you do.
Sure. So for energy healing, it works to help you bring a balance back to yourself. The biggest thing that you'll even notice is I think everyone can relate to the feeling of I just don't feel like myself. Like something feels off. Everything's going wrong. It's just you feel like life is kind of working against you. So that is the perfect time to think about energy healing.
Yes.
Because it really is what is the energy that you're like living with? What are you putting out that you keep getting met with, all of these bad days one after another? And all these bad days then lead up to, a bad month and a bad relationship and a bad work environment and just a miserable life. So,
are you talking about me specifically right now?
I would never. That's confidential.
Okay. Because it sounds like very much what I was dealing with for most of the last 5 to 10 years of my life.
Look how much you've grown, though.
Yeah, it has really had a big impact on me. I'm trying to think of the right way you could phrase this, other than just having bad days and things like mm-hmm. that. When is the a good marker for when somebody says this is probably something I should look into?
Well, I think people don't trust themselves enough. People look to other people to tell them that something's wrong or that they're messed up or something. But I think ultimately every single person knows something is not feeling right with me. And whether that shows up physically in some type of random illness or injury, whatever it is, when something's not right with you. So for the energy work itself, I always describe it as acupuncture without the needles. Because that's a little bit relatable. Everyone's heard of acupuncture, mm-hmm. and most people are scared of needles.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a positive spin. but it also works with your chakras. And that's a word that some people have heard of. But a chakra is just your energy system. It's just the place in your body where you physically take in energy. And so those areas can be twisted or blocked just from life experiences. And that's when life kind of starts to go wrong a little bit.
So basically anyone who feels like my life is not where it needs to be, or I'm not as happy as I want to be, you're a perfect candidate for doing this type of work.
Yeah, because it really helps to get to the root of like what's actually going on. Like you feel like, oh, I hate my job, but like where's that really stemming from? Like, are you really as trapped as you feel like you are? Like, probably not. Like, what's the deeper issue there? You know, and if you can actually get to the root of what's really bothering you, oh my God, like life becomes so much easier, because you're not in this like constant place of feeling like your life is running you, you know, that you're just like in the driver's seat of it.
If anybody knows that feeling, it is me. Because that one of the biggest things that I've gotten from it is, obviously it's very easy to see this is wrong. I hate this. Like, this result in my life I don't like. But never to look back on what got you there or what's keeping you there. And one of the things you've helped me with the most is figuring out the reasons why I've ended up in certain situations, figuring out the reasons why I've stayed in certain situations, figuring out the reasons why I don't feel like there's any way out of it. And once I started to think about those steps that led me there, or the steps that kept me there, it was easier to start to like back my way out of that corner. And another reason why this was a really important thing for me to do is I definitely am not anywhere close to a finished product.
Nobody is.
No, but I feel like I'm very much at the start of this, and I think that's an important place to share from, because another thing we've talked a lot about is like I'll set a goal where all I care about is I want to be this weight by this time. And if I'm 35 pounds away from it, I've lost 6 pounds, but I'm still 29 pounds away, and that feels like I'm failing even though I'm making progress. I think it's an important place to share from, because I'm not telling you I have everything figured out. And if you listen to me, I can tell you how you can figure it out too. I'm saying I am starting to figure it out a little bit, and I'm starting to see an improvement, but I am very much still figuring it out. And hopefully some people can then figure it out with me.
Yeah.
So you say people don't trust themselves enough. Do you think it is that they don't listen to themselves enough? Or do you think it's that they're just not thinking more deeply? They're not thinking deeper into what their issues are. They're just thinking about the actual hurdles that they're facing.
Yeah, that's a great perspective on it. I think it's absolutely both. Like, so often we just kind of cast ourselves aside thinking like, oh, someone knows me better, or someone in your life probably flat out tells you that they know you better than you know yourself, which is entirely false. If anyone says that, run the other way. That's ridiculous. You know yourself best. But I think at a certain point we kind of lose touch with ourselves in that way, and we kind of just stop listening to our gut instinct, or we feel like, oh, I don't feel like this is right, but I don't know, why would I? Like, what's the proof in that, you know?
Right.
It's like the more we stop listening to ourselves, then that relationship kind of is lost. And the whole point of our lives, I think, is to get to know ourselves. And I think energy healing is like a great way to do that. Just helps you to like reconnect with who you really are.
Because I can definitely say I got to a point where I didn't know myself. I knew a version of myself that I told myself was myself. Every bad habit, every, negative action, negative choice, every negative trait that I had, that made up who I was. And any of the stuff anyone else saw that was good, or anything that I might think was good, that was almost like the exception. Like, I'm fooling people who think I'm a good person into thinking that, but really I'm not.
It's the whole, like, I'm a fraud. Yeah.
Yes, which I very much have thought. yeah, I might be good at this one thing, but if I actually try to do it, I'll find out I really wasn't. So how about we just don't do it and we never have to find out? I think, so me, I didn't know myself at all. I got to know someone who wasn't myself. Do you think people are more guilty of not knowing who they are, or creating a false perception of who they are? Like, which one do you think,
I think it's creating
people
a
fall
false,
into more so?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think at our core, we know who we are, without a doubt. Like, I think that's a birthright people have, is you know who you are. You know what makes you happy, what makes you feel alive. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of what you're actually pursuing in your life. It's like with anything, like wherever you put your energy. If you're feeling like, oh my God, I never find a parking spot. Do you think you're going to find a parking spot? Most likely not. Like, that will most likely not appear. So it's like, where are you placing your energy?
So you're very intuitive, and it's interesting that you brought up a parking spot, because my sister and my brother-in-law live within the city of Philadelphia, and there is a parking garage near them, thankfully, but a lot of times I will hang out in the city with them and some other friends where I need to parallel park somewhere. And from the second I pull out of my driveway, I'm immediately anxiety-ridden that I'm never going to find a parking spot. And I have been to a Halloween party before where I literally drove around for almost an hour looking for a parking spot. Eventually found one, but I was almost ready to be like, you know what? I'm not supposed to go to this party. Mm-hmm. I actually was dressed, interestingly enough, for this Halloween party as Johnny Lawrence from The Karate Kid.
Full circle.
Yeah. And going to my Scout U classes, it is in Northern Liberties. There's almost nowhere to park around there. And I will leave an hour and a half early because I'm like, it might take me an hour and a half to find a parking space. So that may be something I can work on, like a less obvious thing where you almost bring things to fruition.
Right.
Like, I know I've done that actively, like my professional life, just haven't pursued the things I should be pursuing, led me to do things I didn't want to be doing. Sometimes in friendships or acquaintances, sometimes in romantic relationships, like I know this is not the right thing, but I'm just going along with it because there might be some sense of safety or control that I feel in it. But yeah, I have started to see that you can make things a reality if you're just willing to be open to it.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of things recently, I've realized, this opportunity is here. I never saw it before because I was too busy being mad about everything else. So you really are a believer, and obviously have seen this, that if you have the right motivations, if you have the right mindset, the things you're looking for will kind of find you. Without
a doubt. Pretty much every time. And it can be like in a way that you wouldn't even imagine. It really is, if you've ever heard of the word synchronicities or if something's synchronistic, it's like, oh my God, I was thinking about the song and then it came on the radio. You know, if you actually take a minute to pause and appreciate, like, whoa, how amazing is that? Like, I was thinking about this and then it showed up for me. That's kind of how these events happen in your life too. Like, oh, I didn't realize, like, oh, I really want a new job. Shit, I just got laid off. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's because you really want a new job, don't you? Yeah. Like, don't you see that this is working in your favor, even if it doesn't seem to be? It's kind of having enough insight to trust that, yeah, if you kind of take a chance on yourself and on life, it's going to meet you where you're at. So I worked at Macy's for the first half of the early 2000s and hated it there, but never really put in the effort to try to find anything else because I knew, I don't have a degree in anything. I don't know what I want to do. So why just leave this place where, like, I already know what I don't like. I already know how to handle it and deal with it. Why am I going to go now do something else I don't want that I have to learn? So just like, I guess I'm fine just doing this. Mm-hmm. And eventually there was a big merger between the company that owned Macy's and the company that owned Strawbridge's, and I ultimately got squeezed out, which for me at the time was the right thing. I didn't need to be there anymore. I was never going to leave on my own. And that away kind of
formed for me to get out of there without my own doing. It just kind of was given to me. I received severance pay, and it's weird because I immediately was like, you know what, I'll take the severance. And then I had a 401k, which they gave me the option to cash out, or I could roll over to another job. I was like, you know what, I'll just cash it out. Who cares? Wasn't very responsible at the time. Cashed it out. I kind of used that as like spending money through the summer that I was unemployed. And then my unemployment was like, had just run out. I was like about to find a new job. And right as I was starting, I was in that weird gap where it was like the 3 weeks before I would get paid.
Right.
I like started working at the worst week where it would take me 3 weeks to get a paycheck. And right when I was about to be out of money, I got this thing in the mail from like Prudential or Merrill Lynch or something, and I opened it up and I'm looking at all the totals in it. I'm like, this looks like the same thing as my 401k. What is this? And so I called and asked them, you know, could you explain to me what this balance is? It looks like a balance I had for my old 401k. And they said, oh yeah, your 401k got switched over to a new provider or whatever they would be called. I'm not really a big financial expert.
You could call them wizards, and I would think that's correct.
Right. I said, okay, so what is this? They said, oh, your 401k just got transferred to a new provider. So I said, so this is the 401k I cashed out like 6 months ago? And they were like, we have no idea what you did 6 months ago. We don't have any records from anything before we took it over, so this is your current balance.
Why have you not told me this before? That's amazing.
I don't think I think it off it.
I love that.
But I cashed it out a second time. So I was very irresponsible. Yeah, I was very irresponsible with my 401k.
Wow.
2 different times from the same job. But I got it right when I needed it the most. So I am a believer that if you're open to it, the world will be more open to you. Mm-hmm. And I was so closed to everything that I didn't see there was any other opportunity for me. And now I'm starting to see that. One of the things that you and I have discussed a lot, and anybody who has talked to me in the last 3 years has heard me talk about it.
Is it going to be about the process?
It is going to be about the process. A huge believer in the process, huge truster of the process. Anyone with 2 ears, I will talk to them about the process and why it was the right thing. Mm-hmm. And part of what I liked about it was I felt like you can apply it to your own life. But I never actually did that. I felt like my life is too far gone for me to get out of it. And through discussing all of my issues with you, we kind of came to this conclusion of like, just trust your own process. Mm-hmm. Have your own process. Trust it. I'm not all the way there yet. Like I still have my doubts and my fears and insecurities that I'm battling with, but I do have more of a process now. I am trusting it more than I ever have before. And it's interesting that basically falls into exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Like, just be open to things and do the right things. Put your energy in the right places, and you'll get what you're trying to get. Another big thing with energy is I was investing so much energy into so many of the wrong things. Like, hate my job and driving myself crazy over that. Or physically I don't feel well, and instead of getting checked out, I'm just telling myself I'm dying. Mm-hmm. Or hate a certain person that's a part of my life and not finding a way to get that person out of my life, but like just dealing with it. Why do you think that we focus so much energy on the worst possible things for us to focus our energy on?
That's a pretty big question. But I'm happy you asked it. I think it's different for every person. As always, it's like a totally individual thing. I think if your mindset is a little more pessimistic, it's easier to just get drawn into everything that's bad in your life, you know? It's like if you there's this one quote where it's like, did you have an entirely bad day, or is it a bad 10 minutes that you focused on for the entire day? And I can always fall into that trap too. And it's like, why do we do that?
Yeah.
I think it's different for everyone. I think sometimes if you're already feeling good and maybe a weird situation happened, it won't hit you as strong if you're in like a better headspace or just mood. But I think other days it can feel a lot worse than that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times my issue was I was stuck in pessimism, or everything was, I just felt doomed all the time.
Right.
So the only things I would focus on were the things that would like tell me that you should feel doomed.
Exactly. And then it completely is like, oh, okay, you think you're doomed? Let's keep throwing scenarios at you to confirm how you're already feeling.
Right. Like just keep falling like further down into that rabbit hole.
Right. Where even with us working together and stuff like that, you can see how it's like, oh yeah, and this happened. And that was actually a really cool, unexpected thing. I really think like once you start following what actually makes you happy, you're going to be met with things that actually make you happy.
Yeah.
Just like the way the world works. It's the way the universe works if you choose to take a chance on it. Like you have nothing to lose. If anything, you have like everything to gain in the process.
But like that's another interesting point is so many people don't consider what they have to gain.
Right.
You know, and that was a big problem for me is, okay, I'm never going to have what I want, or in 2 years, I'm probably not even going to be existing on this earth anymore. How can I be motivated to try harder? But it took me lifting some of that to finally be able to put a lot of these things to practice. And it's not hard to do. What do you think are some things that, even if somebody isn't planning to go into a session or anything like that, what are some little things you could just utilize in your day-to-day life just to help you focus on these things more?
I think number one is pay attention to your thoughts. Without a doubt, it's the easiest thing to do, and it's something that we rarely do on a daily basis. But like, just pay attention. What are the biggest thoughts that you always think? You know, if you always, first thing in the morning look in a mirror and think like, oh, I'm fat. Oh, I look ugly today. Like, pay attention. How many times does that thought run through your head? And then also think then, like, oh, if every single time I look in the mirror and say I'm ugly, am I feeling ugly today? Like that has a strong impact on someone. So if we can just start to pay attention to those little things that we're always telling ourselves and adjust accordingly, you'll already feel a really positive change in your life.
Yes, and I meant to bring this up because it was one of the first things you said. You brought up balance. Balance is something I had no conception of. I felt like I had no control over. And so many people I know are in that same place. I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this where you can actually answer it. Like, where's a good place to start for trying to gain some balance? Is it the thing you deal with the most, or would you say the thing that you're dealing with less because it may be easier to tackle? Again,
I think it can be either way. For some people, it feels like, I know this is my biggest thing and I need to work on this specifically. Other people are like, hell no, this is very intimidating. I need to start smaller, So I think if it was to just be something smaller, ultimately when you feel out of control in your life, you just need something small to help you feel back in control again. And if that is like, I'm going to take a deep breath. I haven't done that in 35 years, whatever, just something to feel like I have, even if it's really small, I have control over this. And again, like that's how like choosing your thoughts or being aware of your thoughts. If you don't feel like you have any control over your job or how your boss talks to you, you have control over what you're thinking, and no one can ever control that.
That's something I mentioned to you. I mentioned it on an earlier podcast. Phillies manager Gabe Kapler, I heard this quote a month or two ago that I think someone asked him, when this pitcher kind of blew the lead for you guys and you lost the game, how do you deal with that? And his response was, we're all in control of how we think and how we feel and how we respond to things. So if I choose to be angry about it, I will respond in an angry manner. Right. I will lash out. But if I realize everyone's going to make mistakes, if I realize that mistake was made only one time and we have 162 games in a season, just being in control of your thoughts, I felt like I had no control over my thoughts. But I do think that that's so important. And one small tip that you gave me, like at the very beginning, was just drink more water.
Yeah, I was going to say
try to drink a certain amount of water, and being conscious of that small thing, it kind of helps you feel like you're in control of more things. If I say, okay, I have this 40-ounce water bottle, I'm going to try to drink 4 of these throughout the course of a day. I'm always conscious of, I have half of it left. I have a third of it left. I finished this one. I have to fill it up again. Mm-hmm. It's like something Joe Rogan has talked about, like be the hero of your own movie. Whatever situation you're in, make the decision the hero in the movie about your life would have made in that situation. That one decision will lead to your next decision, and then make the right decision then. You do a couple small things, and then it leads to, I'm doing something positive, and it leads to bigger changes or bigger decisions. And I just think it's so hard to start with the small steps.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with What About Bob?
Yes.
Okay.
What about him?
Baby steps. Like how simple. Now, obviously, Bill Murray magnificently portrayed Bob in this movie. He literally was taking baby steps everywhere. But I think baby steps are such a good place to start because it keeps you from getting discouraged.
Absolutely. And it feels a lot less daunting when it's, I'm in this job that I don't know how to get out of. But can you take a sip of water? Of course you can. Yeah, it makes it feel like you do have some control again. Because no one can overhaul their life in a day or a night. That's just so much pressure to put on yourself. But if you really start with like, okay, what can I do? Even one thing that would actually be like kind to myself. Like, what if I went out and took a walk tonight? Just something that is helpful to you. It has such a big impact.
Yeah, and not mentioning any names, there are people who think I can overhaul everything in one day. Again,
am I allowed to point?
I don't know who that might be, but I know there are people who think I can fix it all at once.
Of course.
And then when you can't,
I failed.
Yeah, why
it's setting
bother?
yourself up for failure. It completely is. And we basically know we're doing that.
Yeah, it's so easy to set traps for yourself, and it's so easy to fool yourself into not realizing you're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to blame, the world is set up for me to fail. And it's like, no, you are setting yourself up to fail.
You're setting up the world to have it seem like you're about to fail again.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to get back into some more specifics in a minute, but I kind of want people to get to know your story a little bit.
Okay.
So how did you get into energy healing?
Honestly, I think my entire life was just leading up to this. And this is where the whole synchronicity and kind of just listening to yourself comes into play. For my entire life, I've always just been drawn to just like deeper meanings in things and spirituality and just questioning why things are the way they are. And I've just always loved that. And I've always been curious about that. And I knew I wanted to pursue something a little off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. And I decided I would go to nursing school because above all else, I just wanted to be able to help people.
Right.
That was my mission. I know I just want to be able to help people. And I was like, a nurse, like that's like the best way you can possibly help someone. So I decided I was going to go to nursing school. And then I found out that there was a college for energy healing where I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like I could do this, but being a somewhat responsible person, I knew like, okay, I can't make a living being an energy healer, at 18 or whatever. So I was like, okay, I'll go to nursing school. I have this whole plan. Then I'll go to energy healing school, and then I'll just merge Eastern and Western, and everything will be fixed. So no pressure with that.
Everything will be fixed, meaning
immediately.
The map for your life or everyone's problems that you deal with.
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
So literally everything will be fixed.
Everything.
Okay.
So it was honestly, I remember it was like orientation day at Widener where I decided to go, and I was so unhappy, and it was just so evident from like the first, terrible 4-hour icebreaker with other people. Like, what the hell am I doing here?
What was terrible about it?
I just didn't fit in. It's that feeling, and I think it's just like a feeling everyone knows where you're at a place and you're with people probably around your same age, and you feel like, why is this fun for everyone else but not for me? And you feel like you're just like standing out like a sore thumb. And I had so many experiences like that, just not getting like, oh, this is what people are doing. Why can't I feel happy doing that also? Like, what's wrong with me that I'm feeling that way?
So you were questioning yourself at this point?
Completely, yeah. Just like, okay, let me just experiment with feeling like just your average 18-year-old who talks about Jersey Shore and lip gloss. And I couldn't, like, I just felt very out of place and really, really unhappy. And that whole year I was so unhappy. I just kind of stopped going to class, started getting really into Bob Dylan and reading books about life. And I just had like a breaking point in chemistry class one day, and it might as well have fulfilled my foreign language requirements. I had no idea what they were talking about, and I just realized I am not supposed to be here. And I remember I walked out of the classroom and went home, and I told my mom, like, I can't do this. And she's like, here, read this book I have about energy healing, because she's so supportive of me, of that too.
So was that a book she had because she knew it was something you were interested in?
She's always been like a big influence on that.
Okay.
Yeah, she definitely gave me so much exposure to just thinking outside the box. So it's not like I had a challenge of like, I have this secret and I have to,
right,
shed light on it with my mom. But no, from that point on, like, I just knew, like, moving forward, this is what I'm going to do. So I kind of just stopped going to Widener. I attended the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, and life just got a lot easier.
So you felt out of place the second you were dropped into Widener.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't belong here. This is not for me.
It was a very clear, here's my life if I go down this path. And, it took until, April or something for me to have the guts to be like, no mas, time to go the other path. Like, just because I had this, like, here's the practical way to do it, and probably the more, financially lucrative way to do this, whatever. I knew I couldn't do that. Like, I have to choose my happiness because I'm wildly unhappy. Like, what's the point if not?
Right.
Yeah.
It is interesting when everything you do makes you unhappy.
Yeah, and this was the best decision I've ever made. Like, undoubtedly, I've had zero regrets about this. And if anything, like, all of those days at Widener really confirmed, yeah, this is what I should be doing. And I don't even regret going there, because if I had just gone out the gate to energy healing school, I wouldn't have felt so strongly about it as realizing this is so wrong for me. This is how I know that this is so right for me. Yeah,
there was a point maybe a year and a half ago. I thought I wanted to sit down and start writing something. Maybe it would end up being a book. Maybe it would be a blog. But it was going to be titled What Not to Do. And I was basically going to run down everything that ever happened in my life that led me to the point I was at, and be like, I can give the best advice because I know exactly what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Because I did all the things you shouldn't do. So sometimes it takes doing the wrong thing to realize what the right thing is.
Absolutely, yeah. You just hope that then you run in the direction of the right thing when you get that insight,
Yeah.
Once you have that breaking point.
And oftentimes I've probably stepped a foot onto the right path and immediately taken my foot back off of it because maybe I just didn't see anybody else on it. Mm-hmm. So like that's been like a big theme in my life, is feeling like I don't belong, feeling like I don't fit in, or feeling like nobody else understands me, or there's nobody else quite like me. You mentioned this at Widener. You grew up not too far from me. You are also in Delaware County.
Yes, I am.
Have you felt this way most of your life, that you didn't fit in, didn't belong?
Absolutely, without a doubt. You don't go to college for energy healing and feel like you fit in places. Definitely not. No. No, I've always felt that way. Honestly, I feel like it's just been the past few years or so that I don't feel that way as much, because I definitely just feel more comfortable in myself. I think that's been like all the difference.
How much of that comes down to who you surround yourself with? That's
a humongous part. Like, honestly, at this point, I would take being home by myself over being in the company of 20 people who I have absolutely nothing in common with.
Yeah.
Because it's like, again, like, what's the point? If the only thing you come away from it feeling is like, oh my God, I don't feel like myself at all, or those people are terrible, like, what's the point of that? Is that a good time for anyone?
No. And I've often wondered, am I the only one that feels this bad about it? Like, force myself to go into something that everyone else is doing because I think I'm supposed to.
That's the thing. Like, why can't I be having just as much fun as everyone else? Is like, what's wrong with me? But I guarantee you every single person has probably felt that way in some situation or another.
Would you would you have ever, or have you ever at any point classified it as you had social anxiety, or did you ever feel like, oh, maybe I'm suffering from depression, or was it literally just, I realize these are things I don't like to do, and I just feel that I'm weird because I don't?
Oh, I think that was definitely it. I think it was just this overwhelming feeling of like, what's wrong with me? Just really, if everyone is at this phase of life and I'm not there, like it's so easy to fall in the trap, like the Facebook trap of like, let me stay up at 2 a.m. and see what this kid from high school's doing. And it's like, oh my God, why'd that happen?
Yeah.
It's so easy to judge our lives against someone else's. But I think ultimately you just have to appreciate where you're at.
You do. And like your experiences ultimately are what make you who you are. You know, your last moments alive on this earth, you're thinking about the things that mattered to you during the time you were alive. And you don't pay enough, most people don't pay enough attention to that stuff. Like, that stuff doesn't just happen. A lot of it is you have to be in positions for it to happen. You know, if you have people around you that you love and care about, you have to be actively spending time with those people. If you're not hanging out with those people, you're not creating those memories. You're not allowing those things to happen. So you can't, like you said, you'd be much happier being home alone than not the Macaulay Culkin film Home Alone, which I have
without Harry and Marv.
Yeah, two of my favorite movie villains of all time.
The best.
I actually started a budding idea for an episode based around Home Alone. It's not a full idea yet, but I have like
I like it.
Seedlings of an idea for it. But you'd rather be at home by yourself than be out with 20 people doing something you don't want to do. It's like you have the choice in the things that you do. It's one thing, like you have to be open to life. So it's not like I'm going to shut myself into my house alone. But it's like I'm not going to force myself to go do the things that I'm literally getting nothing out of. Yeah,
especially when it comes up as feeling like I'm obligated to do this. It's like, are you really obligated to do this? Like, probably not. And also, again, it's like getting back in like touch with listening to yourself of, do I actually even want to do this? Like, if I'm supposed to go out with these people that I think are my friends, but I'm not actually having a good time, like, do I actually want to be there then?
No, like if you don't want to be there, that's clearly the thing is that you don't want to be there.
Yeah. And then it's, okay, do you actually just not bother doing it then? It's all just like paying attention to like how you're really feeling in a place.
Yeah, and I think we get like a weird sense of feeling an obligation to things we're not obligated to. I don't know if it's just that it's the way we're raised or it's the way we're schooled, that like so many people feel they have this obligation to their job. And my philosophy on a job, if it's not your career or not the thing you're passionate about, is do just enough. Like, other people are better at jobs than I am, but I've always felt like you don't owe your life to your job. Just because things fall behind at work doesn't mean your time has to be sacrificed to catch up. Mm-hmm. But some people believe like, oh no, this is my job. My boss wants me to stay, so I have to stay. Oh, my boss wants me to come in on Saturday and Sunday. I have to do it. It's like, no, you don't have to do it. You have the choice not to. You have the choice, oh, I have to hang out with these people because, you know, I've been friends with this person since I was 5.
Right.
And he or she wants me to do this, so I have to. You don't have to. Your first obligation is to yourself and then to the people closest to you. And another one of my big problems we've talked about a lot is the feeling of having to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
And what I want or what I need is secondary. And we came to the conclusion of why I came to that thinking, just not valuing myself enough and thinking, oh, I don't deserve it anyway, so I'll make sure other people have what they want. And if I don't, it's okay. I became okay with that. How old were you when you found out that energy healing was even a thing that existed?
Probably somewhere in my teens. But honestly, when I signed up to go to energy healing school, I had never even had an energy healing done. It was just something I knew, like, yeah, this sounds like me. So let me go all in on it.
So you had no experience with it?
No
actual, like, knowledge of what
I never even had a session of, like, oh, this is light touch on your body. I never even had that done before. No, it felt right.
I'm, like, very envious of that because the things that I'm good at or the things that I've been told I'm good at, I either never really believed I was good at them, and maybe I shouldn't say also, maybe just because I didn't believe I was good at them, doing the things that I'm supposedly good at were so difficult for me to do. Like, to sit down and write something, I'd be like drained from it. I'd sit down, look at my computer, and just be terrified that at the idea of somebody reading what I wrote, or the words in my head are not going to come out the way I want it to, or I need to write this to be 1,000 words. I only have about 200 good words up in my head right now for this topic. How am I ever going to stretch it out? Even doing this, it's been a thing where anytime, the 3 episodes that I've released so far, I've sat down before hitting record and been terrified to do it. And then while I'm doing it, I'm like, this isn't as good as I want it to be. And then I'm done, and I'm trying to convince myself I don't really need to release this thing. And the first one, I've released the last 2 like on Sunday night after midnight. The first one didn't come out till about 11 o'clock on Monday morning. I physically couldn't get it released on Sunday night because of an issue with SoundCloud. And I was like so relieved. Oh, good. Nobody's going to hear this. Then I woke up the next day, now even reinforced, like maybe I never told anyone I was doing this. Maybe I don't have to do it. And then I eventually was like, no, I took the time to do it. I should at least put it out there and see what happens. And then the response I got was positive. And then the second one, I didn't feel great about it and got even more positive response. The third one I did, I liked that even less than the second one. Still got some positive response for it. So it's like you found this thing that you were like, this is who I am, this is what I should do. And you just knew it and did it. Whereas for me, I'm almost trying to find excuses not to do it. Or keep myself from doing it. Do you think it was maybe something in... Actually, I probably know exactly what it is. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. In those schools, you're kind of taught this is how things are. This is how you're supposed to think about things. And, like, this is what you're supposed to do. And this was a big part of me feeling like I didn't fit in was, like, I'm not focusing on anything that I'm talented at. I'm just, like, going through the motions, like, to get to the end of the day, or going through the motions every day to get to the end of the year, or, like, get to graduation. And I feel like you saying your mom was open to a lot of unconventional things, something that may not be seen as an unconventional career choice, probably didn't seem so drastic to you as it probably did to me.
It was still drastic, though. Like, it was definitely, I remember being in energy healing college and seeing this woman from my town at the mall and being like, oh my God, what do I say? And
meaning, like, what do I say when she asked me, like, what are you doing?
School, yeah, and I'm like, nursing school's great. I remember I just flat out lied about it because I'm like, how the hell do I say this? Like, I'm caught. You know, people are gonna find out, and that was not like the decision and knowing that I was trusting my gut instinct and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. That was pretty much immediate, just with the sense of relief I felt. But in terms of getting comfortable with being like, oh, this is kind of the person I am now, that took a while to get used to. So
you were comfortable with it individually?
Yes.
But as far as to the outward world,
I was a phenomenal nurse. Yeah, it took a little bit longer.
Is there anyone out there who may think you actually are a nurse?
Hopefully not. I think I came clean with everyone.
Before, like, did you ever tell anyone that you had finished nursing school?
No. Oh, no. Oh, God, no. No, I never got to that point. But, yeah, it would be like, oh, you know, how's college? Oh, good. How's your life? How's your kid? You know, it's like, let's deflect this topic a little bit. Yeah,
that's
it's
like the story of my life.
Yeah, it's like it's like a sore spot when you feel like, when you're not really comfortable with it, like you're not going to go sharing it with someone else. I feel like protective still.
I'm very familiar with that. I've been very protective of myself for a very long time. Did you ever feel judged by anyone for doing this? Like, once you did open up about it, were you comfortable enough with it that you just didn't care what anybody thought, or did you ever feel judged, or like people thought you were strange for
oh my
doing
God,
something
all the time?
And did you care about that?
Well, now I don't. I mean, no, now it's so much like, oh, well, I'm doing what I love. End of story.
Yeah. And,
you know, like that's
and whoever
that's the
might
most
be judging you is
part.
most likely not doing something they love.
Yeah. And I don't know. I really hope that everyone can find that for themselves. I think that's what we should all be able to do, is figure out what we love, whether that's like an ideal relationship or a career thing or being a parent, or more travel, whatever that is. I hope everyone can figure that out. And I had absolutely felt still out of place with, random comments, or especially when you feel insecure about something, then one comment feels like, oh my God, maybe I am a witch, which wouldn't be the worst career. Still better than like an accountant, but
it is better than accountant. My dad is an accountant, and I'm sure he would probably agree. Well, he was an accountant. He's not anymore, I don't think. Not really. I don't think what he does is technically an accountant. I think accounting is part of what he does.
He's a transponster.
But yeah, he would probably. Well, you worked with accountants for a while.
Yeah.
You didn't seek that out.
No. But here, this is another synchronistic thing. I've never actually really applied for a job. Like, the way I would get a job is I'd wake up and get job vibes. Just feel like, I think I'm going to get a job today. Then probably walk in somewhere, and then they would offer me a job out of the blue. That's how I've gotten most of jobs, or anything, for that matter.
How many jobs would you say you've gotten just offered to you out of the blue?
More so than... If I've had probably, 15 jobs over the course of my life, probably 10 of them have been offers out of the blue.
Where you weren't even necessarily expressing the least bit of interest.
Yeah. And then it's like, that's actually pretty perfect. Like, thank you.
Is there like one particular one that is like most standout of how it was offered to you? Is there anyone that was maybe like more bizarre or even more out of the blue than the others?
Well, one was, it was at a chiropractor's office, and I woke up with job vibes, so I was like, time to go get myself a job. And I was in between, I had an injury, so I was in between jobs, and I was like, maybe I'll work at a restaurant. Like, maybe that feels right. So I went to all these restaurants, and I didn't have any restaurant experience. So they're like, no, you can be hostess. And I'm like, there's no tips in hostessing. Right. That's not worth my time. So I had to delay my job search so I could go to a chiropractor appointment. And when I went in there, they said, would you like to work here? We've been looking for like a new front desk person. And I'm like, I have 15 resumes on my front seat.
Yeah.
How convenient. Yeah. So that was probably the coolest one.
So that's probably the one you went into that you weren't expecting?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I just woke up knowing that, like, today's the day I'm going to find a job. And I did. And it was in a way I did not expect, because I didn't go in there applying for one or asking for one.
Right, but like you were open to the... Well, I shouldn't even say you were open to the possibility. You just woke up feeling like this is going to happen. Yeah,
and I think you can trick yourself enough into having any of those days. Like, you know what? Oh my God, I look amazing today. Or I'm going to have a really good day. Or, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to get that like unexpected, just like flash of insight that I've been looking for. And chances are you're probably going to have that. And like really you have nothing to lose on it.
Right. Like I think for me, the issue I run into is... I can very easily tell myself I'm doing that, but I'm not actually doing it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm almost trying to fool myself that, my mind is operating on this level. This is not working out, but it's like I know I'm riddled in doubt, and I'm not actually giving off that type of energy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a matter of like practice. I don't know if it's a matter of having to see the result. Like if you are a 5'9", 120-pound guy who is like, I don't like being a beanpole. I need to start lifting. You might lift for 2 weeks and you don't see any results and you'll stop. But if you scratch your forehead and you look down and you see like a bigger bicep than you had before, or see like the vein come down your bicep which you never had before, that like reinforces, I'll keep doing this. So I don't know if it's a case of you need to see a result to really buy in, or if you really need to buy in before you will see the result.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm trying to figure out. And you know what? I guess I already kind of have seen results. Like my life is definitely different. The way that I started this journey with you, we hadn't probably talked in a couple months. Mm-hmm. And it was the second day of the NCAA tournament. Because I remember I took those 2 days off from work. You texted me. I actually walked out of a facility where I had an ultrasound done. Like, this is when I was finally about to address my health issues. You had texted me, hey, you crossed my mind or whatever. just wanted to see how you were doing. And I was like, well, this is weird because I haven't heard from you in how long, and you hadn't heard from me in how long. You happened to text me on a day that I had this test done for this pain I'm having that I think I'm dying from. And that's kind of how this journey started. Now, you told me when I told you what was happening with me, you said, I think you probably need to have a session.
Yeah.
And you said, I've thought this for a while now. And I said, well, how long have you been feeling this way about me? And do you remember what you told me?
How about you refresh my memory?
You told me I've known since the first time I talked to you. And I said, wow. Right. I said, wow, really? And you said yes. And you had like mentioned it to me before, but you were never really like adamant.
Yeah.
You need to do this. But you told me things are clearly getting out of hand.
Yes.
You need to get it under control. But do you remember when I asked you, I said, well, what made you think that about me? Do you remember why you thought that about me? You told me I could tell that you had an inner battle within yourself, which could not have been more accurate, because I've mentioned this to you. I've mentioned this on probably each of the first 3 shows I've done. I've never actually tried to do something and failed at it. Mm-hmm. I've always stopped myself. I've always been my own hurdle. And it was very true. I was in an inner battle. A lot of that has kind of subsided. Like the things I would be saying about myself, to myself, in my head, all day, every day, I definitely believed it. That's probably why the person I knew as me was not me. But like, it's not like we had been talking every day for a year and you were like, oh, I can sense that something's going on with him. You didn't know me before we ever talked for the first time. Most people don't know each other before they've ever talked. But the first time you talked to me, you realized something was not right with me. And that's one of the reasons why I said you're very intuitive a little earlier. Is that like an ability you've always had? Is that a skill you've always had? Is that something that you developed through going to the school you went to?
I think it's definitely something I've always had. And working with people and just hearing the things that they've gone through and helping them kind of get to the root of why they are the way they are has definitely, enhanced that intuitive ability. But that's something I've always just had kind of a natural skill for, is sensing how people are feeling or what's going on with them.
And is that something that an ability any of your siblings share, or is that pretty unique to you?
I think all of us are intuitive in our own way, but I think my brand of intuition's a little bit fine-tuned right now.
So you have a unique brand of intuitiveness.
I'd say so.
Okay.
Like, especially for the healings, like a lot of times I can put my hands on different parts of your body and I'll have the experience myself of what you went through. So without you telling me what's been going on, I can feel it and sense it and know that, like, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened for you.
Yeah.
And this needs to be, acknowledged and worked through. And once that can kind of be shaken up and just not buried anymore, you actually create space to have a new feeling to be there. So then you're not operating from the same wounded place that maybe you have forgotten about. And it just becomes so natural of the way you function that you totally forget why you even are the way you are.
Yeah, like these patterns happen and you just fall into a routine and you just kind of go through the motions of everyday life. And sometimes you just have to break like one piece of that to kind of break the rest of it down. And like, I haven't completely gotten out of that, but I've come a really long way and it's helped me a lot. Now, I know you said this was something that you knew, like, this is me, this is what I want to do. You went to school and you knew you had made the right choice. Was there any point between, say, graduating and having like your first real client? Now, when I say real client, I assume the people around you probably were clients of yours.
Yes.
Because you were doing this and they care about you and they believed that this was something that you were meant to do. But to me, like, the first real client is like a person that didn't previously have a relationship with you. Like, was there any point from graduation to that first person where you ever questioned it or were worried about it or thought maybe this wasn't the right thing to do?
Yes. Oh, totally. I'm telling you, like, it's even feeling so confident in something. I think that comes with feeling like just having more experience. Like, that always helps, But without a doubt, even during it, it's like, am I helping this person to the best of my ability? Or are they actually getting out of it, as much as they had hoped they would be able to? I think there's always some level of just feeling like, are you doing the best you possibly can be doing?
Can you tell when someone is getting what they're supposed to be getting out of it?
Yeah, a lot of the times. Yeah.
And like, what are some of those cues that kind of like affirm you that this person is actually getting the benefit they're supposed to?
Well, it's interesting, especially if it's like a couple sessions or something. You notice just like the language that they use starts to change. They're like a lot nicer to themselves. Or it's like, I had a really good week. It's like, that's incredible.
So you just kind of see that they're behaving differently.
Yeah, they're behaving differently, but the way they are acting in life is different. Their experiences with it can be, you know what, nothing has actually changed in my life, but I feel better. That's the best possible outcome you could hope for. Because it's like if you take a situation and you're going to be stressed when you get to work. So you enter the workplace already feeling stressed because you're going to be stressed. But if you enter the workplace feeling a little more balanced, a little more in control, just a little bit more at ease, that stressful environment is not going to have as much of an impact anymore. So it really is like, if you can get the inside stuff right, the outside stuff does not feel as overwhelming.
It's interesting because I definitely have had internal and external things happen where I was like, oh, I actually feel different. Mm-hmm. The first thing obviously was the first session I came in, I talked a lot about my health and like a lot of like the big stuff that was like weighing on me. And I remember at the end of that, I was like, oh, like I feel like I can just like stand up and I'm not fighting against something to stand up out of the chair. Like I felt like the weight off of my soul basically.
Yeah. And
then after the table work, I remember standing up. You're what, like 5'7" or 5'8" probably?
5'7" 3/4.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So some people would call that 5'8". And I'm like 5'10", 5'11". And I remember standing up after it was over, and I felt like, is she not as tall as I thought she was?
You were taller.
And I remember saying to you said, how do you feel? I said, I saw myself in the mirror. I said, I feel taller. And you were like, you look taller. And it felt so bizarre to me, but I was like, that's not in my mind. I don't know if I was just standing up straighter. I don't know if it was just the weight off me. I don't know what it was. But
everything that was cramped in you had been just elongated out of you.
Yeah, like the accordion was like finally stretched out.
Exactly, yeah.
And then I noticed going to work that Monday, stuff that I normally would get so angry about just didn't really bother me. Like it was like annoying, but it wasn't affecting me. Mm-hmm. And so that was like an internal thing that I was like, oh, I'm not as hung up on this stuff as I was even 3 days ago. And I noticed I wasn't saying horrible things about myself in my head all day. In fact, I almost wasn't doing it at all.
Yeah.
It like that thought would start to arise and I would be able to cut it off. Like, oh, I'm going down this path, let me stop. So for me, I felt like immediately I noticed like a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how common a huge difference is or if it's just different for everybody. But that was something that I've been wanting to ask you. Like, how do you know? Can you always tell? And can you tell when it's not helping someone? Has that ever happened to you where, like, someone has not been helped by the work you've done?
It hasn't been that they haven't been helped, but it's a lot of times it's like they're not ready to go to the places where they actually need to go in order to change. You know, like a lot of stuff happens throughout a person's life. Some can be really traumatic or devastating. And a lot of times we just bury things away. And maybe those are the things that are making our lives feel so miserable or us feel extra depressed. But we don't want to get to the root of it because why would we want to resurface a pain that happened? Like, who would want to do that? So a lot of times it can feel like you just can't go as deep with some energy work as you want to in order for the person to really feel free because they're not ready to go there yet. And that's perfectly okay, because everyone will arrive to this in their own time.
So
you
basically,
you can't force this.
Yeah, I was lucky.
That was your time.
I had nowhere else to go.
Nowhere else to go.
I had nowhere else to go but there.
That was your breaking point. That was your time to turn this around.
Yeah. And so maybe that was the good fortune. Maybe if I had taken you up on it 2 years ago,
you might not have been ready for this. Yeah.
And while it probably would have helped me even to just talk about some of the stuff that I wasn't really talking about, I wouldn't have gotten as much of a benefit as I did now, because like I said, I had nowhere else to go. Like, I don't know, thinking you're literally dying.
Yeah.
And thinking about an event like 6 months in the future and being like, I don't know for sure if I'm going to make it to that. And then not sharing that with anyone around you, like, that this is how I feel. Putting on a good face all the time. The amount of energy I had to have wasted doing that. Mm-hmm. Everybody expects me to laugh all the time. Everybody expects me to be joking around. I have to do that no matter what. And it's like, despite the fact that I'm feeling so terrible physically and mentally and emotionally, I'm still putting on that performance all the time. I think being able to release some of that, I feel like now I don't feel like I'm putting it on anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like the naturally me being that way is coming out, not I have to do this for this group of people. They expect me to be this way. I have to do it. Mm-hmm. I never wanted somebody to say, oh, is everything okay? Oh, what's wrong with you today? Like, I dreaded anyone ever asking me that stuff. So I like never would give anyone a reason to ask me. But yeah, like I noticed a huge difference immediately. And I notice a huge difference every session I've had. And it's always in a different way.
Yeah.
Basically, to me, which I take as like I'm just getting closer to like all of the root causes of it, mm-hmm. and then dealing with that stuff. A couple more things. Are there any misconceptions any common misconceptions that people have about energy healing?
I think it's more just not understanding what it is. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just not knowing what it is, and therefore it's weird. I don't know what it is, so it's strange and it's make-believe. I think that's probably just the biggest one. Yeah,
I can say for myself, at Macy's, this was May, I believe, of 2001. The Sixers were about to play, I believe, Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks. I had to work this one particular Saturday night.
You had to rack up your 401k.
Yeah, had to rack up that 401k that I got to use twice. All I wanted to do was watch the Sixers game. I was like, I don't want to be here. So I just was trying to think of a way to like go in, because I didn't want to call out. I was like, the game is not till 7:30 or 8 o'clock, whatever. I worked at 2. I was like, I can put in some time and then find a reason to leave. I was like, I don't want to say I'm sick because I don't want to pretend I'm sick. I ultimately came up with this idea. I had a concussion about 2 months before, and I had gotten sent into a stock room and pretended I hit my head and was acting as if I had been concussed, knowing nobody can question it. They will let me go home. It won't be me faking sick, or it won't be me calling out. They'll be concerned that I hit my head and I'm going to write an incident report, which I didn't do. I didn't write up an incident report. I was like, whatever, it's no big deal. It was my fault. And I got to go before I got to go home. So I'm thinking, I tell them I hit my head. I had a concussion just a couple months ago. You guys remember that? This feels a lot like that. Trying to make myself look like
concussed.
A little dazed. Yeah. I think I was pulling it off beautifully for what it's worth. But I went in, I was in the men's shoe department. That's where my manager was at the time. I sit down on like one of the chairs, like with my head in my hands, like really playing it up.
Really milking it.
And this woman comes over who was, I guess, mid-40s. And she tells me I'm an energy healer.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what is that? And she probably explained it to me. All I'm thinking is this woman now is telling me she's going to fix me right on the spot. And I'm like, I just
want to watch the game.
Yeah, like I just want to get out of here. Now this person's telling me she's going to heal me.
Whoa.
And she like had her hands on my temples and was doing some other stuff. I don't even really remember. I had my eyes closed for it. And all I'm thinking is like, man, this lady's really trying to blow up my spot. I have to pretend like this isn't doing anything because I just want to go home. And I just wrote it off as like, oh, this maniac just tried to fix my concussion and tried to ruin my night. And then I never heard the term energy healing again until you told me that's what you're going to school for. Mm-hmm. But I thought I had one more question for you, but it slipped my mind. It was something I thought of, and I forgot it.
Did you just get another concussion?
I may have.
Watch out for those boxes.
There's no Sixers game tonight, though, so I don't have to
You're
pretend.
not at Macy's.
No, there's no reason for me to have to pretend the rest of the evening. So misconceptions aside, it's really just an ability of being open to this being a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, everything you do, you're exerting energy for. Even things that are like thrust upon you, whether it's having a conversation, that's energy that you are exerting. And I can't tell you how many times I've just like sat down and talked to a group of people that maybe I haven't seen in a while, and I'm just like completely wiped out just from doing that. I'm like, what is wrong with me? All I did was talk to people.
Energy drain. Yeah.
It's just something that I think people need to be aware of, what you're putting your energy into, what is consuming your energy. I mentioned before we started recording the idea of time being such a valuable resource, and like once it goes, it never comes back. I would put energy as a resource that's right up there with time.
Yeah.
And you now have devoted your life to it.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell anyone listening what all the services, everything that you actually do in your career at the moment?
So I do energy healing, if you haven't heard about that lately.
I really, honestly, I hope that someone didn't realize that up until that point.
They're like, what's energy healing?
I hope there's one person out there that believes you're a nurse. And I hope there's one person out there that just found out that you're an energy healer. Or maybe that person, that's how they just found out you're not a nurse.
That would be
anymore.
phenomenal.
But yes, you are an energy healer.
I'm also a massage therapist.
Okay.
So I do that, and I also do health coaching too. So it works with kind of looking at your health and looking at your entire life and helping to find a little bit more balance. So all of my services are all about kind of helping you to feel the most like yourself you possibly can.
Okay. And I know that your business thus far has been referred to as
Cara Healing Massage.
Okay. But I also know that it won't be known as that for too much longer.
Not too much longer at all. No, Cara Healing Massage is officially Radically Whole. That is my new business, and I'm really excited about it.
Okay. Now, is there anything other than the name that is different about your business?
The whole, I even came up with Radically Whole because I think it takes a really radical person to want to get to the bottom of what's going on with them and create the life that they want and actually value themselves. I think that's a bold act to do on behalf of your own life. So I'm looking to attract radicals.
And if the first business is leaving in play, well, the new one is coming in place of the old one, how can people find you moving forward? Anyone listening to this, how can they find you?
Without a doubt, shout into the wind.
Okay.
That's the best. No, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a website, radicallywhole.com. And then all my information's on there, too.
So, how I know on Facebook you're found as Cara Healing Massage. It's
Yes.
the same thing on Instagram?
Just Cara Healings.
Cara Healings
With a
on
K.
Instagram.
Cara with a K. That's an important one.
That is
We should have
important.
covered that from the get-go.
Well, it'll be in the title of this
Okay,
episode,
good.
so people will know. So, new business is coming. You are building your empire.
Building the Empire. Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. We'll not do a podcast on that. I feel like those movies have been talked about to death. And I feel like all the themes in those movies, I can find them in other things.
Yeah.
So radicallywhole.com.
Mm-hmm.
When can we expect to see radicallywhole.com, or do you not know that yet?
Well, when is this going to air?
This will be airing on Monday, I believe, August 6th.
Well, then this will be up on Monday,
All right.
August 6th.
So anyone hearing this, it will be available.
Radicallywhole.com.
When you heard this.
Yes. Yeah.
So I can vouch for, through energy healing or just as a human being, Cara is one of the kindest, most thoughtful, most caring,
thank
most
you.
intuitive, most positive and helpful people that I've ever met. She has helped me a lot through energy healing. It's a big part of the reason why, like I said, I'm even doing this new project now and trying to pursue the things that I do love and the things I am passionate about. So I cannot recommend her highly enough. So before we get out of here, just one more time, list your Facebook, your Instagram for anybody who may not have caught it already.
So it's radicallywhole.com. And then by Monday, August 6th, I'll be, Instagram /radicallycara, Facebook /radicallycara.
Okay, so those will be changing as well.
They will also be changing.
Okay, and they will be changed by the time this airs.
The times they are changing.
Okay.
Yes.
So I probably shouldn't even have gone over so much of the stuff it was previously.
It's just further. It's going to make me do it even faster.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that it could
Thank
inspire you to do that.
It has been. Thank you so much for having me on here.
And like I said, I can't recommend her highly enough. The level of help that she's given me, the level of growth I've seen in the last 4 months is probably more than the level of growth I had from like age 14 through 35. Like, it's been a massive difference in my life that I notice. I think I told you once in high school, I was like 4'10" until I was like about to be 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then I grew to be like 5'8" over the course of like not much more than a year. And I grew so fast that I actually look different to myself in the mirror. Like, that's not supposed to happen. You see yourself in the mirror every day. Growth happens over such a long amount of time that you always look like yourself.
Yeah.
But I didn't look like me in the mirror. And I feel like that's the level of growth I've had emotionally in the last few months, that it's like,
wow,
I don't feel like the same guy I was before I started doing this.
That's incredible. I'm so proud of you.
So thank you for the help that you've given me. Thank you for helping me go down this path. Thank you for sitting down and giving me a big chunk of your time on a Thursday night.
Thank you, too.
/ Monday morning, for people who don't realize this isn't recorded live. I wish you all the best in your empire being built. I have all the faith in the world that you will be very successful. Is there any last things you want to say before I close it out?
To anyone who's listening or has been, just trust yourselves. Wherever you're at in life, it's going to be okay. That's the biggest takeaway that you can possibly get from that.
And trust the process.
Trust the process.
Doesn't have to be the Sam Hinkie process, but find a process that works for you and trust it.
Yeah.
I love that it took you telling me that to realize this thing I have not shut up about for years was something that I could actually institute for myself.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So that is the show. A little preview for next week. I mentioned on last week's show that I would either be talking about energy healing or a comedy-related topic. Obviously, energy healing was the topic for this week. So next week will be the comedy-related topic. I will be talking about my favorite working comedian, Gary Goldman, and kind of the different roles that he's played in my life over the last few years, how I was very impressed by him at one time, and then very intimidated by him at another time, and then very inspired by him more recently. So hopefully that is something you will enjoy. Hopefully I'll be able to do it in a way you'll find entertaining. So that has been Ronnie versus the World. For Kara Laudenslager, I am Ron Pashery, and I will see you next week.